And speaking of money, did you know Health Sciences North was short-staffed 194 members on Tuesday, that's yesterday, due to COVID-19 exposure?
Yes, I do. I did know that because we discussed this before we went on air, but other than that, I didn't
More of a
know.
rhetorical question.
I know.
But CBC was reporting 194 staff members being out because of exposure. So either they have tested positive or someone they know or close to has. 4% of the hospital's total workforce.
Wow.
So they're short-staffed.
4% of hospital staff, are missing.
Missing in action, not able to come in.
Due to COVID-19.
So it's like an indirect. It's not that the hospital is overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed because they don't have enough staff.
Correct.
Because the staff have been exposed.
They're 4% short.
That's right. Yeah. So just a few provincial things. So, healthcare is handled by the provincial government.
Correct.
So a lot of our statistics and things are reported on a provincial level.
Mm-hmm.
So COVID hospitalizations have increased about twofold in the last 2 weeks. So they went from 550 to 1,300 in the last 16 days. So in normal time, there would be a big surge, right?
Yeah.
But because there's this problem where staff are exposed and can't come in, that's kind of exacerbating the problem.
So how does this work? And you could probably enlighten me on this. So the new kind of, or where we're at right now with,
Sure.
The workplace is that, a lot of workplaces have adopted rapid testing.
Sure.
To test yourself to see if you have COVID. And
Before you come in.
And you do it regularly. I don't know how regularly they do it. Is it daily?
Usually twice a week.
Twice a week.
Yeah.
So, and I know these tests are only a certain percentage accurate. Correct?
Well, we know that for sure.
They're not 100% accurate. That's the consensus now. We know these things. So we're basing our workplace on a test that's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And someone comes in and they don't have COVID, and the test says they do. So now you have to stay at home.
Yeah.
Because the test said you had COVID, even though in reality you may not have COVID.
Well, that's not even really up for debate, right?
Well, that's what I mean.
Because it doesn't matter.
But you don't really know.
The people that make decisions like this, it's not too important if it's a quote unquote like a real case.
Yeah, I know, but
because the test is the case. The test is the test.
But come along with me on this little journey.
I will.
Is that
I'm with you.
You're going to work. You don't have COVID. You take the test or whatever. You're at home. You take the test. It says you have COVID. You have COVID, even though you don't. And you call in. You said my test says I have COVID. Okay, stay home. So now next time you do have COVID. You take a test and the test says you don't have COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, you can come into work now. Now you go into work with COVID.
But you do have it.
You have it, but the test says you didn't.
Those are the two options. Yeah.
So for us to base our workplace policies on this not accurate test, can you see a little bit of where I'm having a problem with the logic of this?
Yeah.
So now you have someone who has COVID at work, spreading it around just because the test you can't rely on is. So to me, either everyone stays home all the time or everyone goes in, you know what I mean? Like basing it on this test, look at the problems this is creating now in our healthcare, right?
Sure.
I don't know. I just take issue with that. I had a conversation with some really good friends of mine last night, and in order for us to get together, and socialize, they want me to be able to take the test first.
Just to be safe?
But I said the test isn't accurate. They said that's fine.
They don't. Yeah, it doesn't
but
matter.
I don't see the logic in that.
I understand. I'm with you. I understand the other the argument we are kind of straw manning. I understand the test saying that you're COVID positive is what they care about.
I know, but
you're looking at the test as incorrectly diagnosing an underlying illness.
Yeah.
But I think the test being positive is the illness for a lot of people. Like if you No, it sounds very silly.
Okay, I love the fact you're explaining this to me. So.
Oh, so do you think that this is rudimentary?
No, I can just
because if you get the, if let's say imaginary scenario, just like you brought up, if someone gets COVID, doesn't affect them whatsoever, but they do have it. They're like an asymptomatic case. The idea is they might carry that on, give it to someone else.
Yeah.
But if you'd taken a test and it told you to stay, you have COVID, you might have been aware. So I understand the other side of it. I personally don't agree with that, but that is what they would say.
Yeah, I just think it's it's a very flaw-filled way to base, a large part of how we conduct ourselves in society, because
sure.
I could have that test that's not accurate, and it says that I have COVID when I don't. It says I don't have COVID when I do.
Sure.
And so I go into work when the test says I don't have COVID, but I do. I spread it all over the place.
No, yeah, that's a good point.
And then I come home and I'm done with it now, and I have the test. It says I have COVID, even though I don't, and I'm at home. It just, to me, that knowledge alone, if I was in a board meeting with someone saying, should we use this as a policy, the cognitive dissonance in people to say, well, at least it's some way to measure. It's like if I was a builder and I had a ruler that was different every day, and one day I'd come I'd measure it's 10 feet, and then I ordered all of the materials based on, at least I have a ruler though. I have a measuring stick. It changes every day. It's a different size. The house, what would it look like at the end of the day?
That can be an objective measurement. Yeah.
Wow.
No, that's fair.
I don't know. I just, again,
can I riff for a second on this?
Rock and roll.
I remember I took a statistics class.
Yeah.
It was actually called Economic Treatment of Statistics or something along those lines.
Uh-huh.
So it was an economics class, but it was, the bent was mostly toward economics in statistics, like learning statistics to apply to macroeconomic
how do
issues,
statistics
right?
Exactly
so
go along with
basically
economics.
A big part of the class was like how to not be misled by data. That's like why you take statistics, is so you become inoculated, safe. This is kind of ironic I think that, but
everyone should take a
from
course.
false statistics.
I think everyone should take that course. But
so that was the second statistics class I took at Laurentian, and it's funny that I put a lot of weight on this because the textbook that we were recommended for the class really changed my mind on a lot of things. And one of the things that I kind of have been developing since I took that class was I think the way that we're going about testing for COVID is all wrong, but not for the reason you brought up. But I think your reason is valid as well.
I appreciate
Even if
that.
the tests were 100% accurate, our data is totally useless in my opinion, and this is why. I'll give you an example. It was something people understand.
Sure.
So imagine Census Canada couldn't reach everybody. Imagine Census Canada can only interview like 25% of people.
Which I think is the case. They don't reach everybody.
It's close to everybody.
It's close to everybody.
It's against the law to not fill out your census, by the way.
That's right.
But imagine they couldn't. Imagine they could only reach a quarter of people, right?
Sure, yeah.
And they asked people about their incomes. The only way that you would trust that data is if it was randomly sampled. If you had a random sample of that, if that 25% of people was randomly picked. Imagine you just sent out the census and you said...
It's almost like every sector of society was represented.
It needs to be equally represented by randomness. That's the whole point of randomness, right? Random control trials, same principle. It needs to be random. Imagine, we sent out forms that say, please report your income to... so that we can do the census, and only a quarter of people respond. Like who would you think are going to be the people that respond?
The higher income
It's
earners.
the people that are proud, probably more happy to
they're making
this
a lot of
is
money.
the point with the COVID test.
Yep.
We're only reporting the tests that test positive of the people that take the test.
Yep.
So to me, this is it's pretty much useless. Like it's not totally useless. I get the argument we made. We're trying to steelman the argument of if you feel fine, you take a test that says you're positive, you stay home anyway because you might pass it on to someone else. To me, that's not the way macroeconomic data. It's not the way macro health data should be collected.
No.
It should be concentrated on random trials. So we do random tests in the community. And we say, okay, the prevailing level of COVID in the community is this percentage.
Yeah.
That means, we expect this many people to be put in the hospital. That means we're going to implement these measures. But to me, the way that it's been going on since the beginning is totally counter-logical to what we're even teaching.
Oh, interesting.
In educational, settings, which is it needs to be a random test for the data to be useful. If it's not a random test, like you said, with mailing in your tax return or how much you made, imagine we never checked how much they actually made. Like we just trusted what they said. That data is useless. Exactly. It doesn't say anything. They're like, oh, Canada has an average income of $110,000. That means it's twice as good. The data is not useful.
This is the thing that I take exception with. Now we make decisions based on that data.
And this is very murky,
right?
As it is.
And there are agendas that will say this data is more favorable to their agenda. So they'll take this data and they'll say, well, see, because of this data, we're in the right for our thinking and we want this to move forward.
Yeah. So, like if you're sick, if I were the supreme leader.
Sure.
If you're sick, stay home. If you don't feel well, stay home.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good chance you're going to give that to somebody else.
Yep.
Not even COVID. Could be any disease. Many diseases are deadly.
For sure.
The flu is deadly to weak, older people.
And this goes back to our conversation on AI. We're relying on this test to be able to tell us, like I know if I'm sick or not. Again, someone made the argument, though, we could have the virus with us even though we don't have the symptoms yet.
Yeah. So
that's why we need this test. This is an accurate test to tell us maybe 50% of the time. But this is the problem. If it's 50% of the wrong.
50% is basically useless.
It's telling you you're sick when you're not. It's telling you you're not sick when you are. It just really, to me, that alone should be like, okay, get rid of this idea and let's really try and exercise our own, like when I see that sign on the business that says, have you experienced these symptoms in the last week?
Don't come in or whatever.
To me, it's like I have a neighbor who puts a box out with the eggs in a cooler and says, leave $5 and grab a carton of eggs. And people would say, well, they're going to get ripped off. You can't do that.
Well, it's just not the case.
They don't get ripped off. No. If anything, they might get a tip here and there.
Overwhelmingly,
they get
data
more
has
money.
shown that people will obey the social norm.
Or giving more. So again, to me, these tests are just like, look, really, we all care about our health. Who doesn't care about their health? Who doesn't care about, feeling good and feeling well and not feeling sick? Or who in their right mind really wants to go out and get someone else sick? Really, honestly.
Really good book if you want to learn more about this. It's a really good book called Predictably Irrational.
Yeah, that sounds like
we assume everyone's perfectly selfish in society, but it's just not the case.
Opposite. It's the
People
opposite.
Are very, they want to be good citizens.
Yep.
And there's lots of experiments to do that. One of them is just like we said with the eggs.
Yeah.
There's been controlled trials with that. And, these are experiments. These are not like self-response surveys because everyone's going to respond to a survey positively. Yeah. Do you stay home when you feel sick? Everyone's going to say, oh, yes. But if you actually observe what people do, you find that most of the time they do actually do the right thing.
Yeah.